Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thank you guys for joining in on another episode of The Power of Storytelling. Today we have Mary Box on with us today. If you guys do enjoy the conversation, please make sure to leave a like and follow on whatever platform you're listening on. We do appreciate you guys for being here, and let's get into the conversation. Awesome. Well, once again, I do appreciate you for joining on. I hope that people enjoy this conversation, and we'll kind of just get into it. Normally, what I like to do to start out is just have you introduce yourself and kind of talk about what you do, and we'll kind of go from there.
Okay. Hello, my name is Mary Box. I am an opera coach and a conductor and newly an administrator of an arts administrator because I've just recently started an organization called the Montrose Project, which celebrates women composers. And the idea is that we find all of this great repertoire that was underperformed in the last few centuries, as well as perform music by women that are composing today.
Nice. Yeah. So just kind of reflecting on the brilliance of women in the industry.
Yeah, women in the musical in the classical music industry.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Awesome. How'd you decide that you kind of wanted to do that, or how did you get into wanting into like starting this?
Yeah, into starting the organization. So I'm a classical pianist. I grew up in San Antonio, Texas, and then went to undergrad and did a master's in solo piano and then another master's in opera. And so I've been very deeply entrenched in the classical music world for a very long time. But then I realized in 2020 I was playing an opera at Minnesota Opera by Paola Prestini, who is a woman who started the National Sawdust Festival in upstate New York. And I suddenly realized, and it was in 2020. So I suddenly realized when I went home and that was the first thing that I'd ever played that was written by a woman. And here I was, a musician who'd been playing for 30 years, literally. And I thought, there has to be a lot more repertoire out there that we just haven't looked at, because years ago, these works just weren't even being allowed to perform. So instead of, going back to school and trying to do research papers and things like that, because I hate writing, anyone who knows me knows I love playing the piano and I love collaborating and I love conducting orchestras. But writing is not my strongest suit. Um, so anyway, this is basically just a huge research project that has started to get legs starting in the Houston area, and just to find all of this great repertoire.
Nice. That's awesome. What? So you said you were a pianist. How? When did you start playing piano?
Sure. So I say that I started when I was 6 because that's when I started with piano lessons. But I have 3 older sisters, and I, as the younger sister, wanted to do everything that they did and was the little. I guess apparently I was always the tattletale. I was that little bratty sister who just like ran after my big sisters, wanted to do anything that they did. And so I was always playing whatever pieces they were playing, but by ear. And my mom said, I don't want you to only learn how to play the piano by ear. So she put me in piano lessons, which at the time was really, really difficult looking back at my family because my dad was a Baptist pastor of small churches. And so we never had many resources, but financial resources. But my mom always did everything that she could. She sold, and before she actually in her later years she actually started her own finance company. But when I was a child, it was a single income household with my dad's income while she was helping to raise us, and she did everything she could. She sold bread to everyone that she met, and she would barter, chairs and furniture, whatever it was, to make sure that her children learned how to play an instrument. And because when I was born, my a couple of months before I was born, my dad had given my mom a piano for her birthday, but then I was born and she didn't have time, of course, to learn how to play. And
Mm-hmm.
so so then I guess she just went, okay, I'm gonna help fulfill my dream through my
Yeah,
children's lives.
for
If I
sure.
can't do it, I'm gonna help my children do it. Yeah, she became very creative throughout all of our growing years, like trying to figure out how to pay for all these piano lessons. And so
That's
yeah,
awesome.
it's very special legacy she's left us.
Hmm. Oh wow. Yeah, I think that's one thing that like that a lot of people grow in like get inspiration from is their parents or like their mom and the love that your parents give to you, and they show you how to work as hard as they possibly can to give you whatever they can. That's for me. Like my parents divorced at a young age, so my mom raised me and three other children, and she was a teacher, so she wasn't super financially set, but she did whatever she could to make it work. But that's awesome. So, talking about this as well, did you have any mentors growing up? Like, did you have anyone that kind of steered you in a certain direction or taught you like life lessons that you still use today?
Yeah, so immediately what comes to mind have been all of my individual piano teachers.
Mhm.
So I was really fortunate when I was ages 8 to 11. I had a teacher named Linda Parr who taught me and all of my sisters in Northeast Texas. And then when we moved down to San Antonio, my mom just said, okay, who's the best piano teacher in town? I'm going to make sure that my daughter gets the best education that she possibly can. And so she found Ken Thompson, and he was absolutely instrumental in my life. And I mean, I still keep in touch with him. I had him through, I was in 6th grade through 12th grade. And regardless of anything I wanted to do or not do, I knew that he always completely believed in me and my talent and my drive. And I was gonna say something else. Let's see. There's something else, something else about Ken, but yeah, I mean, he himself was also a businessman because he was a piano teacher, but then he realized he also had a love for business. So he created what's called the Musical Arts Center of San Antonio, which employs many other piano teachers and has taken on a life of its own, and it's pretty radical to see. So I've had incredible mentors, and then of course with my in my undergrad I had a great piano teacher, and then in my master's and my second master's, yeah, they're all. I mean, each one of them, like with Kit. Excuse me. When with Ken, when I was in middle school, I think back to 7th grade, and I think every single week I went into piano lessons, and I didn't practice that year for whatever reason.
Hmm.
And every week he would be like, if you want to get better, you have to practice. And I think just as a middle schooler, my emotions and my hormones were just going wild, and I was just sob and sob. And then I'd go home and my mom would say, well, if you're not going to practice, we're going to take away the piano lessons,
For sure.
understandably. But and then I would just cry and cry even more. But I remember Ken just never being phased. He was just like, okay, we're just gonna, and I look back and I go, okay, bless his heart. He just took it in stride. He was
Um,
like, okay, kids have emotions sometimes, and maybe she'll be better next week, or maybe she'll have practice. I don't know, but
and what made you start to turn that around? What made you get that drive to practice a lot more and to improve? Was it just the way that he was treating it and kind of still believing in you?
that's a good question. So the reason I'm a pianist is I can't say that it's because of one person,
Hmm.
or even other. I can't say that it's necessarily an outside force,
For sure.
uh, but it really is an internal drive of I. Uh, I was not always, let's just say, like in totally in touch with my feelings, and wasn't always invited to express them. So when I now I look back and I go, oh, playing the piano was my form of meditation. I was very depressed. Also, I think it's because of all the hormones in those years. Like, I was a very depressed child, and in middle school, and I think that the piano and playing helped me actually stabilize, because it helped me to express these emotions that were way too big for my little brain and my little body. And if I hadn't gotten those emotions out, like, whether if I hadn't, like, ended up in counseling in my 20s or something, like, I don't know how I would have made it past my teenage years if I didn't have this huge outlet to be allowed to have big emotions and to be allowed to actually express them.
For sure. Yeah, I see that a lot. Of course, you never truly know, but I see a lot of people that they have these drives and the passion for stuff, but either they don't feel like it's like the thing that they should be doing because everyone tells them they should be doing something else, or they don't want to, or they want to make someone proud, whether it's someone in their family or it's their friends. But I think it is super, super important to find that thing that you want to do, even if it's, being a garbage man or whatever it is. Find what you're passionate about and just go all in, because that's where you're going to be able to express your emotions. Kind of like you're saying, if some people, they can't express their emotions in a certain way, which is what they're passionate about, then they could just end up, not being able to deal with those emotions, and it could, take over. What I like to ask this too. So out of all of the instructors that you had, what is probably the most common thing that you've gotten from these people that kind of, like, you could tell, like, okay, this is what a lot of successful people do? Is there anything that's like commonalities between them that you've learned and took with you?
Sure. I think the biggest thing that I've taken from my mentors and from the legacy of my very strong women in my life, and even my dad, is grit. So if there's one thing that I can say that I'm really proud of about myself, is that I can say I have a lot of grit. Like, in 2019, I broke my back, in a freak, like,
Wow.
climbing accident, and there's been other things, with people dying and
Mm-hmm.
other tragedies in my life, and all of those kinds of things. Um, but there is something in my psyche that I've learned from all of these people that goes, okay, I may not think that I can get through this, but I've done it before.
For sure.
Or I've seen other people in my life do it before. Um, and I think the biggest thing that playing any kind of classical or any instrument, honestly, um, can teach you is discipline. So, like, right now, I have two piano students. I don't teach a lot anymore, but I do have two piano students, and one of them is a beautiful little human, but and practices a lot, isn't the most talented. But I keep telling her, look, you have progressed so much, even though, like, even though you may not do this as a career. I think she's 7. I go, you've progressed so much because you do this thing and you work at it every single day.
For sure.
And that's one of the things I've seen a lot of people who are extremely talented in something just fall by the wayside for, there's a myriad of reasons, but the people who survive are the ones that have the grit and the discipline that they've learned from an early age to go, if I work at this every single day, I can totally be successful at this.
For sure. Yeah. It's, you see a lot of successful people nowadays and you think that they just somehow magically got there. But that's kind of why this whole thing was created as well. And that's why I love doing it, is, talking to someone as accomplished as you are, talking about how it wasn't always perfect. It wasn't just given to you. You had to have grit. You've always had obstacles that you've had to overcome. Hearing that from someone could inspire someone else to say, oh, I've had a bad day and I think that, it's just not meant for me. But in reality, if you have that grit, if you have that passion to keep going in that discipline, I mean, you could literally change the trajectory of your life and actually do what you want to do if you keep working toward it. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I think anything you do in your life, if you want to be great at it, I mean, maybe not me in basketball. I'm not that tall, but but there are a lot of things. If that is truly your passion, you can you can work at anything, I think.
For sure. One of these things I usually like to ask as well is, and you hear it a lot, but I love to ask and kind of see what the answer is, if you could talk to yourself 10 years ago, 15 years ago, even 5 years ago, what is that one thing, one piece of advice that you would tell yourself to become, where you are, even more successful or whatever it is, even happier?
Sure. 5 years ago, I would say don't go to that bouldering gym and
Yeah.
climb onto that wall. That no,
Oh man. Yeah.
that would be the number one thing 5 years ago. But that was 4 years ago. No, I'm fine now. Also, if anybody has back injuries like this, just do what your doctors tell them. Don't worry. I'm now doing yoga and running.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Nice.
But it took a lot. That took a lot of hard work.
For sure.
All the physical therapy. No, but I would say when I was about 10 years ago, I started seeing a counselor, and I wish I'd done that 25 years ago. I didn't always have the resources to be able to seek out that kind of help. But there were also a lot of I used to be more religious than I am now, and there used to be a lot of pressures on me that not to seek out mental health counseling. But I definitely think that that's an extremely important. It was an extremely important tool. Like my friends that knew me before I went to counseling 10 years ago and after, they say I'm a completely different person. And I used to think that I was happy. And then I went to counseling and actually dealt with all of these issues that I'd been just like pushing away and pushing away. And and it was amazing because these parts of myself that were just like silly and goofy and a little bit ridiculous are a huge part of my personality that
For
I
sure.
had to come to peace with and go, oh no, I'm definitely a nerd and I'm definitely goofy, and that's great. It's not this thing. I think I was still stuck in the mindset of like I have to be cool
Yeah.
so that the cool kids will like me.
Yeah.
Well, who are the cool kids? I don't
Who's to
know.
say that they're the cool kids, right?
Yeah, I was still living in like a high school mindset up until late 20s, which is embarrassing. Um,
It's definitely a
still,
part of life.
yeah, I was that kid in high school who was always journeying like, I want to be cool. How do I be cool? I mean, ridiculous, uh, but understandable. But I had to go to counseling to figure out all of these different parts of myself and to find how I could be happy. So that is like number one, hands down. That's the best piece of advice I would give anybody.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. And now, usually we would kind of end it there, but I do like to ask you, since you're so accomplished in this industry, is for anyone that is, wanting to become a pianist or even be in the music industry, what is that one piece of advice for you to kind of help them in their journey?
I think, oh gosh, that's really hard.
Yeah, it's a hard one. Yeah. Just anything that would help someone along the journey, or give like some insight from someone that has been there before for someone that hasn't been there before, what to expect, kind of anything.
Sure. I would say kindness. So, whatever you do, wherever you end up in your career, whether it be musical or not, just be kind to everybody, because I feel like some people lose their kindness along the way and lose why they're even in an art form or something. But never lose your kindness to other humans, because that's the whole reason we're here anyway.
That's an awesome piece of advice. I appreciate it so much. Thank you, Mary, for hopping on here. Do you have anything that you would like to promote or talk about real quick before we end it?
Sure. I'll just talk a little bit about Montrose Project.
For sure.
So the Montrose Project again is the organization that I've started for women composers to celebrate them, and we have our first concert coming up in Houston, June 11th, and we're just hoping it's going to be this, it's going to start something, continue to start something that that will be here for years to come for women composers.
Awesome. Yeah, and also on the Slate Foundation website, under your podcast page, I'm gonna go ahead and link that as well, just so if anyone's checking it out there, they'd be able to check it out. Awesome.
Great.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate it. And I'll talk to you later.
Okay. Thank you,
All right.
Boston.
Yep. Thank you. Have a good one.
Okay.